This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
Hi, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. We haven't been with you for a few weeks.
We're back.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year. We have been up to a lot, including
a lot.
Our trip to San Diego. We went on a trip to San Diego for our jobs here in Syracuse, New York. Tell the viewers about that.
Oh, yes. We took a little journey on over to the West Coast. I know we have a lot of fans who listen on the West Coast. Not necessarily all of you are Padres fans, but I do have to tell you, we stayed at the Hilton Bayfront in San Diego, right across from Petco Park, literally right across the street. It was beautiful. You got a lot going on out there. Quite tantalizing, I might say.
No, like the epitome of tantalizing, which we know is a word Ashley uses quite often.
It was.
Today she was late because she was shoveling out her car because that's how snowy it is. You guys, we were so in awe just of like the sun. Like, that's what stopped us in our tracks.
Here's the thing about Syracuse. Not only is it cold and doesn't snow all the time, but the sun actually just does not shine for 4 months. You will not see the sun.
Like, dreams are lost. Hope is forgotten.
You are getting no sunlight. It's like a plant needs sunlight to grow, and we're not getting any sunlight. Anyways, just to paint a picture of where that all is right now, my 6th floor window in my apartment, okay, outside of my bedroom on the 6th floor, has a snowdrift covering the window, so I cannot see out of the window on the 6th floor.
You don't even know what's happening outside. All you want is just a little excitement.
all I want is to see the sun. But I saw it in San Diego, and it was a delight.
Yeah, honestly, I think we both, or at least I'll just speak for myself, like I know going into that experience, I truly kind of felt like, well, I'm an East Coast girl. I'm always going to be on the East Coast. That's all I ever want to do because that's all I know. I don't even know why I felt that way. I thought that California was going to be different, but I actually want our California viewers to kind of chime in a little because I'll be honest. I had somebody tell me one time that the difference between like New York City and LA is that New York City was a good hell and LA was a bad heaven. I don't know exactly what that means, but in my mind, I was like, I'd rather live in a good hell than a bad heaven.
I totally agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But does anyone else feel that way? All I'm going to say is that may be true about LA, but San Diego was like a good heaven.
Yeah, I don't
was
think San
awesome.
Diego's a bad heaven by any way, shape, or form. That gas lamp quarter was a delight.
Y'all, we could not get that.
No, we just have to tell you about that for a minute. All right, the gas lamp quarter in San Diego, lovely few streets. We were saying gas light, gas glow, gas lamp, gas...
Wait, gas glow was crazy.
Gas
that was
glow
me on
was
like
insane.
the 3rd day.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going on? We could not figure it out.
Gas light district or quarter, depending on how you feel.
The moral of the story is we ended up saying we got gas lit in gas lamp district, which I thought was kind of funny.
We kind of did. I would say, I think we're East Coast girls. I think a lot of people that watch this podcast would say that, but I really do like it out there. So, if somebody offered me a job out there, all right, we'll move on.
Always on the hunt. Who has an agent? Anyway, we're getting back into talking about baseball as per usual. We are 2 Syracuse reporters who have a baseball podcast that's focused on the Mets, but we're doing a lot of teams these days because that's what you guys wanted and we heard you. We're going to start here. The Mets signed Sean Manaea. That's just big news in the baseball world all around. I think a lot of fans were waiting for that, Mets or not.
Yeah, listen, we're quite late on this news. Apologies for that, but that doesn't mean that we're any less excited about it. You guys know how we felt about Sean Manaea. I like this deal, 3 years, $75 million. I think that the Mets... Well, we'll get into the rotation in a moment, the broader picture, but I think that's what the Mets needed, right? You lose Severino to the A's, biggest contract in A's history, good for the A's, I guess. Manaea, we know what happened last year. Set a career high in innings, a career best ERA. I mean, he was fantastic all the way down the stretch through the summer into the postseason. Ran out of gas a little bit in the postseason, I will say, but 3 years, $75 million, you can sign me right up for that. He is an old truck. He's 32.
No, I totally agree. I have to say I thought that Sean Manaea, just as an entity, was one of the brightest spots of the 2024 season. As a man, as a person.
Yeah.
He rocked. And honestly, I'm still not, I don't want to use tantalize again, enthralled by the lineup and the what we have going on. But without Sean Manaea, I'd actually feel fearful.
No, without
this
Sean
was
Manaea,
lock it down, dude.
I was gonna feel sick without Sean Manaea. And Sean Manaea was one of those things. David Stearns, if you're David Stearns, you gotta get it done. It's a reasonable price range. It's semi-affordable in terms of the starting pitching market, and a guy who loves New York and vocalized numerous amounts of times how much he wanted to be back in New York. If you were David Stearns, gotta have Sean Manaea.
And honestly, it just seems like a David Stearns kind of pick to just kind of, you know what I mean? Like it's the right kind of potion that yes, the handshake. Like he's a great guy, but he also is a little bit old. I'm not going to say he's necessarily a fixer-upper, but he came in and nobody
he was a fixer-upper.
Sort of. Nobody knew what to expect.
And now it's an HGTV dream home.
And now that it's a dream home, buy the home. Like I mean, you did all the work to fix it up. So you
were
just
renting.
don't. Yes.
Now you gotta buy.
Now you gotta buy.
But I will say, you all know I have to come in with this. So everybody knows Manaea's turnaround was due to he started, I guess, what would it be called? He started, I guess, trying to replicate Chris Sale's delivery on the mound. And it worked. He really just woke up one day and said, I'm gonna be Chris Sale. And then he was kind of Chris Sale. Crazy. Anyways, though.
I'm gonna run a marathon.
Do you worry?
Does that work? I'm gonna get paid more.
Anyway, do you worry about a guy who, and this is going to bring us into a broader topic on the slated starting rotation right now for the New York Metropolitans. Do you worry about a guy who had a 4.74 ERA last postseason? In the playoffs, Sean Manaea was not tantalizing. I should point that out, except for we know he was going through some things. That NLDS started in the Phillies. His aunt died. Sean Manaea was going through it, and I appreciate that he was still out there. However, it wasn't the best postseason run anyone ever saw. And also, he has a career 4.0 ERA now that was greatly benefited by last season. So before last season, it was a career ERA over 4. Do you worry about the fact that coming off of a career year, in essence, there could be a backslide?
The problem is that you're essentially signing him with the assumption that he's going to be able to replicate greatness.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, that does happen across sports. I mean, Pat Mahomes feels like an example of somebody who replicates greatness. Josh Allen replicates greatness.
But they didn't have a career resurrection at 32.
And that's my point. Like, unless you're that kind of player, and you've always been that kind of player, and you had that dog in you from the start, I don't know if I would necessarily be sold on that, which is why I say we need to bulk up the rotation a little bit more. I do still like, I said dill on accident. I do still.
Dill pickle. Sorry.
Dill dressing. I still like the signing, but I think you need more now. Like, that was amazing that it happened, but nobody was expecting it last year. It was a bonus. I don't know that I'd hang my hat on it.
I like the signing in terms of 3 years, $75 million. That's a great price for Manaea. That's a great price in this market. Again, like I said, a guy who wants to be back in New York and pretty low risk, right? Even if Manaea is good, that's still a good contract. But what I would like to say is I think of Sean Manaea, and I think the reason why last year's rotation worked in the way that it did, Sean Manaea is like a 2 to me, like a very good, like 1A.
And yet he was the ace.
At best. Well, he's about to be slated to be the ace again, and he doesn't have, to me, last year it was like Manaea and Severino and then Peterson at the end were kind of 1A, 1B, and 1C with that stretch run. And if Manaea is expected to be just the 1, depending on what happens with Senga, that concerns me. That worries me.
You're wanting a 1A.
I'm wanting a 1, and I'm wanting Manaea to be the 1A.
Yeah.
And that'll bring us into a deeper conversation of the rest of the rotation, which I'm not feeling tantalized by, spoiler alert. So right now, it's shaping up to be Manaea, like I said, a career 4.0 ERA. Frankie Montas, who they signed this offseason, a career 4.09 ERA. Kodai Senga has a limited sample size in the United States, pitching here in Major League Baseball, but a career 2.99 ERA. David Peterson, career 4.08 ERA, and Clay Holmes with the reliever turn starter turn God knows what's happening. And then your backup options are Paul Blackburn and Tyler McGill, and we all know how I feel about those two.
We sure do.
Where I'm going with this is you're basically banking on, with that starting 5, 2 guys who had the best starting seasons of their career in Manaea and Peterson. You're banking on one to have a huge bounce back in Kodai Senga because dealing with injury last year just was not an ace by any way, shape, or form. We saw that in the playoffs. And then a reliever turned starter in Clay Holmes. I'm not feeling confident.
I understand that. If I'm going to put an asterisk next to any of these names, for me, it's actually going to be Senga. Like, things could turn around. I'm not ready to just, act like that's a non-factor. Because I think based on the way that went, like, I'm honestly not judging him based on last season at all. I feel like he was still recovering from stuff. He wasn't necessarily himself. I would like to just kind of see him in this little fresh slate, quite honestly. I think he had an odd year. I think he had a weird year.
And he was hurt.
And and he was hurt. Like he was recovering. Like he wasn't he wasn't, I don't think he was like ready, his full self. That being said, I hear what you mean. I think when it really comes down to it, you look at every single person who you just named, it feels like you're still missing a big fish, which is what we sort of said from the start. And that worries me the more that time passes.
Yeah.
Like that needs to be something that we're sort of seeing happen if it's going to happen.
Because the market is thinning. But
correct.
To your point about Senga, sure, that could pan out. Senga, like I'm talking about 1s and 1A, Senga could end up being your 1, and then Manaea is your 1A or flip-flop. And then Peterson's a very formidable, 2, so that could all shape up. But just the concept of banking on a big bounce back and 2 guys to replicate career years is risky. There's no other way to put that.
It's feeling like concepts of a plan.
Concepts of a plan. That's one of my favorite phrases.
we need a real plan. But I kind of want to ask you a question going off that. Do you think, you said last year you felt comfortable because you felt like there was a 1A, a 1B, and a 1C, and people were sort of splitting the pressure.
Down the stretch, at least.
Would you feel comfortable with potentially a situation like that happening again?
Yeah, if it all pans out. But what are the odds that they go 3 for 3?
I don't know.
See, last year, I think that was not to call it a flash in the pan, it could happen again, but just last year, what you got from Severino, Manaea, and Peterson down the stretch, the fact that you could rely pretty much on all 3 of them, on all 3 of their 3 out of 5 times for the rotation, and then Quintana got good at the end of it, was that is hard to top when you're not working with, I guess, traditional ace caliber guys. You could be, but you don't know if you are yet. Concepts of a plan.
The concept of a plan. We'll see how it all shakes out when the plan turns into a reality. The last thing on the pitching note, the Mets are allegedly still in on Roki Sasaki, who reportedly increasingly does not care about the media market and is warming up to the idea of coming to a city like New York. That's interesting. That's tantalizing, no?
If they were to get Roki Sasaki in that rotation, I would feel worlds better, although we do know that you never know with the pitcher coming over from Japan. We've seen it with Senga, whatever. But I would feel better about the depth. To me, it's the depth that's a problem because like I'm talking about the 3, Senga, Peterson, Manaea, okay, say one of them has an off year, then you're down to 2 you can rely on. And then God knows what's going to happen with Montas. And Clay Holmes just, quite frankly, seems like an experiment. So sure, you have Paul Blackburn and McGill behind them, but if you got Sasaki in there, then I'd feel good.
Yeah, you need a little bit more confidence, and I do understand that. This feels like you're just going in with one plan but no backup.
It feels
I need a backup
you have
plan.
A starting 5-0 line and no depth behind them and has that ever been a good plan?
No. What if somebody gets hurt? What if there's too many things that could happen that you need to plan for the what ifs a little bit more?
I agree.
But, and I feel like you put this somewhere on your notes, David Stearns sort of has figured out a way to piece those puzzles together in the past, and I do think that I can speak for both of us when I say that in David Stearns, we trust.
Yes, and I've not been given a reason to not trust him yet. So I will say I'm hesitant, but I am trying to be optimistic.
To give me a reason not to trust you once you break my trust.
Or else.
All right, Pete Alonso. What's going on? What's the situation?
No market for Petey, I'll tell you.
Brutal.
No market.
Jeff Passan, John Heyman still believe that the Mets are the favorite to land him. It still is sort of this back and forth of Scott Boras is his agent, correct?
Yes.
Wanting the best for him, trying to get the best offer. At the same time, Alonso has had a difficult time in this market trying to get some bidders.
Yeah. Jeff Passan's been saying, even within the last week, that he believes the Mets are still the front runners to sign him. And if Jeff Passan's saying it, I believe it because Jeff Passan, what he says normally comes true.
Yep.
The only other team that's even been mentioned in the discussion has been the Angels possibly wanting him.
He's not going to the damn Angels.
For Pete's sake, literally, for Pete's sake, don't go to the Angels.
Come on.
I mean, Petey, you don't want to go over there. The Angels are just like a floundering team. They're in baseball purgatory. They've struggled to get above 500 for the last decade. They got ownerships problems. You don't want to go be an Angel.
I don't even feel like his wife wants him to go be an Angel.
No, I don't think Haley Alonso. Well, maybe she'd be tantalized by LA.
Yes, I agree.
But not by the Angels. Because you know what? Then you're living in the Dodgers shadow all year long.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Never coming out of that.
Never coming out of that. But today, Bob Nightingale reported that, and we know he's sometimes reputable, sometimes not, of USA Today, reported that Scott Boras is trying to use Prince Fielder's 9-year, $214 million contract as a comp for what Pete should get. And when I opened my laptop this morning to see that, have we lost our minds? Scott Boras, have you lost your mind?
Scott Boras be saying anything, though.
He'd be saying anything
and
these days.
And he just wants to see what's going to stick.
Should we be making a comparison to Prince Fielder? Because should I point out to you that for the Tigers, Tigers with that 9-year, $214 million deal. How'd that go for Detroit? Because he
Right.
played there for about 2 years.
Right.
Then they shipped him off to Texas and paid most of the contract, and then he retired.
Which is interesting, Len. Like, why compare it to that? Like, what do you think was even his intention in doing that?
I guess just like a slugging first baseman, but to me, nobody should be making Prince Fielder comparisons ever, okay?
Yeah. I feel like he's such a quirky guy that I feel like he's always playing some sort of long game. Not sure exactly what it is at any given time, but I love his one-liners, and I'm waiting for the next one.
I respect Scott Boras and what
Same.
he does, and I
Same.
respect the hustle and what he's trying to get for Pete. At the same time, I think it's absurd. I think, in my opinion, and there's been increasing traction on this, I think Alonso's going to end up with like a 1, 2, 3-year deal with opt-outs, obviously. I don't think he'll be on a 1-year deal. I think that'd be a little crazy. I think the Mets will try to swoop in with like a 2, 3-year deal with like opt-outs, player opt-outs, team opt-outs after the first, second year.
Here's the other thing, and I'm not going to pretend to be some negotiator or agent, but I wonder if it really is to your benefit to continue to wait and try and outlast and et cetera. Like, if you're not getting any other bidders or you're not getting the price that you want from other teams, then is that actually helping you in the long run? Like, I wonder if the value actually declines. Like, do the Mets behind the scenes find out what other teams are offering and then be like, screw it, we're actually going to go even lower? And then he's really in a hole? I just wonder. You know what I mean?
Well, I think he's in a hole regardless because I think the Mets kind of saw there's no market for him.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay him these prices that Boras wants, to be frank.
100. And then, so what are you going to do? You know, like, I'm saying if you're Pete.
It's a stalemate.
It is. And I don't know that Pete's on the winning side of it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, with the options that I see, it's like, just come back to New York. And it's not like, I don't think the Mets are just holding out like it's going to be contentious or anything.
Yeah.
I think they were just taking their time and being respectful in the process. But, like, that's a good match. Pete Alonso and the Mets make sense. I think at this point, seeing what else there was out there, which is not much, he should be here. Just bring him back.
And to be honest, to your point about waiting and holding out, does that benefit you? Maybe. But we saw what happened with JD Martinez last season. Not to always make that comparison, but we saw it firsthand. He starts the year here in AAA in Syracuse. You don't want, I think the Alonso deal will get done before spring training, before everybody reports, I should hope. But you're playing with fire, with waiting and seeing. I mean, we saw what happened to a few free agent guys last season.
Also, rumor, but gonna mention it anyway, the Mets are allegedly still very much in on Alex Bregman. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, this would be a similar situation to one we discussed prior, where Bregman's a third baseman. He could DH. Then you're talking about moving Vientos to whichever one of those roles he vacates, either DH or third base. I don't think the Mets are ready to DH Mark Vientos yet. I think from everything I'm hearing, he's still young enough. His defense wasn't, not serviceable at third base. They want him to grow and develop as an infielder. So I would be surprised if they DH Vientos. So I think at that point you're looking at a Vientos moving over to first. If I hear news that the Mets sign Alex Bregman, not to say they couldn't get both Bregman and Alonso, but if I hear the Bregman news and all of a sudden Bregman's coming to New York, I'm feeling a lot less confident if I'm Pete Alonso.
I understand that. And that's when, if you're Pete Alonso, you're really screwed. Because now what?
That's when you're Pete Alonso, you're like, all right, is somebody going to give me a job?
I know.
What?
No, that's when Pete Alonso goes on LinkedIn and says he's open to work.
He's got the open to work green circle. Open to work.
You know what's up. New today, the Mets held a meeting with Tanner Scott. That was according to SNY. So that feels pretty reputable.
Tantalizing.
Andy Martino noting that the Mets plan to add relievers, and there's a chance that they could be shopping at the higher end of that market.
And I would like to hope so. First of all, I like to hear that. I'm always trying to shop at the higher end of the market when Steve Cohen is my owner. Steve Cohen does not shop in low-class places. But also, the Mets reliever situation right now, we just kind of went over the rotation in terms of a broad scope. So who are the Mets bringing back reliever-wise? Well, you have Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Jose Butto, Dednell Nunez, Danny Young, Sean Reed-Foley. Put a little parenthesis next to that, God help us. Brazoban and McGill, God help us again. So that's a lot of the same cast of characters from last year.
Which, for the record, I don't hate. I don't.
But I don't love. I am not in love.
I'll meet you in the middle there.
I'm lukewarm.
1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Diaz, they're going to live and die with him.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still fine with that.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes.
Butto,
I liked Butto.
Butto
He was
and
good.
Nunez had some really good
Nunez
flashes.
was good and had a lot of
Nunez got
potential.
hurt. Yeah. And even Reed
Danny
Garrett.
Young.
Even Reed Garrett had some moments. All you can ask for in this life are moments.
I feel like you had a character arc with Garrett.
I did have a character arc with Reed Garrett. He was up there with Reed Foley for me at the beginning of the year, and then I decided that he was serviceable. But the point is, I think I would like some fresh blood in there. Also worth pointing out, Ryan Stanek is still on the market. Old friend Phil Maton will not be joining us again.
Fine with that.
Thank God. But I mean, I think they need a reliever or two. And I think a guy like Tanner Scott would fit in. All of a sudden, you want to talk about depth with the rotation, depth-wise in the bullpen, then I'm feeling a lot better if they add a piece like Tanner Scott. David Stearns likes to add depth sometimes. He's been kind of collecting pitchers this offseason. I couldn't even go through them and tell you them all because half of them are from, like, God knows where, like, you know, lower levels, the minors, guys that haven't caught on in a few years. He likes to add depth in that sense, but in both the rotation and the bullpen, I am looking for David Stearns to add a piece of depth that you feel, I guess, confident in, stability-wise.
We just need a little depth. That's all there is to it.
It's an whole line, really.
Fun fact of the day, courtesy of Ashley Wenskoski. The Mets traded for Francisco Lindor 4 years ago today.
I know,
Wow.
it's the anniversary.
Still the biggest signing of the Steve Cohen era until Juan Soto proves us wrong. That's according to Ashley.
That's
and
my
I
opinion.
totally agree with that. Let me
Yeah.
just say. Like, still awesome, big day. I'm sure much more media coverage, etc. Soto, that is,
Yeah.
yes. I don't really give an F about that, though, as far as that particular comparison. Like, we're gonna need to see how this all shakes out, what kind of legacy Soto has here, etc. Francisco Lindor, certified captain, certified my favorite,
My hero,
certified, handsome,
King of Queens,
everything.
We can reflect in 4 years, if we still have this podcast, on how we feel about the Juan Soto signing 4 years later. But I would just say, I know in terms of what it means for baseball, the Juan Soto is a bigger deal. But Francisco Lindor, what he's meant to this team in the last few years has been, quite frankly, irreplaceable.
Irreplaceable.
Yeah.
I can think of definitely some, but, you know, few people who I really feel like have had such a big impact on the culture of really any program, the way that Francisco Lindor has on the Mets. I think he kind of turned everything around, you know, like even in the podcast that we do on Syracuse Sports, which is called the Orange Zone Podcast on YouTube, if any of you are interested in that. All the time we talk about culture and how big of a factor it is in the wins and the losses. And I truly do believe like that's a big thing and the analytics will never show it.
Yeah.
He's the kind of person who has added to that in a way that is just irreplaceable. Like when you have good people on your team, then your team I truly think has a better chance of being successful. And he's a great person.
Yeah, and not to mention that, he's great on the field, too. I mean, in the MVP conversation behind Ohtani last year. So I think that was kind of the premier signing to open the Steve Cohen era, really, at that time. And now we'll see what happens moving forward. But just a little fun fact, it's been 4 years of Francisco Lindor in New York, and they really gave up nothing for him. You want to take a look at a fun trade? Take a look at that trade.
Dude, I don't know
With
why.
Cleveland.
Yeah. In my head, like it wasn't Steve Cohen behind that. I don't know why.
Really?
You know, I didn't think it was Steve Cohen for some reason. That is like amazing.
That was like, I believe, right when Steve Cohen bought the team.
Right,
Essentially,
right.
that offseason.
How long has he been the owner for? Like 4 years now?
Yeah, I believe it was 2020.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because that would have been the beginning of 2021 that he signed Lindor. I believe he bought the Mets right in the fall, like the November, December of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he got the team right before COVID, and he still is a baller.
No,
got
right
it.
after COVID.
Oh yeah, was it?
It
Oh
would have
yes,
been
March
the
20.
winter.
Even more
He was
so.
making moves in the COVID pandemic.
He was busy in the COVID pandemic,
Yeah.
dude. He did not stop at all.
He was at home in his house plotting how to buy the New York Mets.
No, legitimately. I mean, he has plenty of houses to plot in.
Yeah.
All right, some Dodgers news just to wrap things up for our Dodgers fans. The Dodgers traded middle infielder, is it Gavin Lux?
Yes.
Okay. To the Reds in the wake of,
I know. Just say Kim. They'll know who you mean.
all right, the Kim sign. In the wake of the Kim signing, I
don't wanna
apologize.
botch his first
no, we
name.
do not
So
want to botch
sorry.
his first name. I will get the pronunciation of that right the next time. Thoughts on that, just generally speaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Dodgers kind of had a backlog and middle infield. They had too many infielders. Lux didn't really fit into that once they signed Kim. Mookie Betts will be moving from right field to shortstop into next season. And so the Dodgers signing Kim, which is, I'm looking off of our notes here, a left-handed hitter whose best position is second base. They signed him to a 3-year, $12.5 million deal on Friday. Lux kind of became expendable as a left-handed hitter. Kim is like I said, Korean infielder, so that just kind of furthers the, I guess, Asian American influence that the Dodgers are cultivating. We'll see what happens with Roki Sasaki and all of that. But the Dodgers, you just got to give it to the Dodgers. The Dodgers, not only just in Japan now, but with the Korean signings, the Dodgers have something on lock over there. And it fits into the LA culture, and it all just fits.
Yeah. No, just in general, I just feel like they have something going on over there. Like I feel like they catch a lot of heat because of some of the deferments and the contracts and this and that. But like whatever they're doing, it's working for their organization,
100%.
and they are World Series champions. So
And also that.
I just don't. Honestly, I have to say I don't know that I agree with all of it and the way that they go about it, but it's working for the players. It's working for the organization. Certainly seems like, again, one of those teams that has very good chemistry.
Yeah.
Like things are going well.
And a good strategy, like I said, for the culture out there and the fan base and the whole 9 yards. So they still have middle infield depth, even after trading away Lux to the Reds with Tommy Edman, Colt World Series Classic favorite. Drop by ball, the whole 9 yards.
Not one doubt about it.
But yeah, we'll continue to monitor, what the Dodgers are doing, what the Mets are doing, all the big free agent signings. But I almost feel like it's a weird feeling, January, because certifiably I've reached the point where it's like I miss the Mets. Because, college football occupies me for a while.
Same.
So I don't think about it as much. But I miss the Mets point, and I've hit like the countdown to pitchers and catchers spring training point at the end of February.
Especially once the Super Bowl is passed. I am even more so. I am wanting legitimate baseball season.
Yeah.
So we will definitely continue to update you guys on all of this. Even as far as Roki Sasaki, I see you have a bullet here, and I totally agree with it. Could this new Kim signing impact that in some way, shape, or form? We will definitely let you know about it. And we are back. Thank you guys for your patience. We did take a few weeks off, but we don't get paid any extra to do this, and we needed some time with our other jobs. So thanks for hanging in, and we should be back to once a week now that the new year has rolled around. You can find us anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can find us on social media. Handles all the same, @YMetsPod. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week, barring anything breaking, in which case we will be here.